Welcome to CodeRush at Build 2025. Today we're looking at AiGen with voice coding. So Mark, what have you got for us today?
Well, today we're going to look at a faster, smarter, cheaper, AI-powered coding assistant inside of Visual Studio.
Cool.
Faster, smarter, cheaper. Let's start with just diving right into it. To trigger it, I'm going to double tap on the control key, and then I'll say what I want. Hey, I'd like to use the factory design pattern here. Can we obsolete the notification class, and any new types that you create, can you put those in separate files for me? And then I release, after I'm done talking, release the control key. You can see we've got some feedback there that the AI is processing the request, and then the request is implemented. You can see here we're jumping right up to the obsolete for the notification class, right up there. Over here to my right is the AiGen navigation window, the AiGen navigator. And I've got next and previous bound to familiar shortcut keys, F8 and F7, and I can hit those and I can go through all of these. I can, of course, use the mouse to interact with it, but I'm just going to hit F8 here, and we can kind of go through and see all of the changes. This is similar to the code that we started at right here. Notice now we've got a create notification. We're passing in a string to identify what kind of notification we're going to create. We can also show a diff so you can see what's going on at each one of these points right here. Okay.
So a simple double tap of the control key and AiGen is able to take your spoken request and modify your code in accordance with your specifications. That's really simple to use.
Yeah, it is. It's really, really nice. Let's jump into something maybe a little more complex here. So let's take a look at this method over here. I've got this class. I've got a process data inside here. And if you look at the process data method, it's doing a lot. There's a lot of stuff that's in here.
Yeah.
What I want to do is break it into pieces, but I want to break it into pieces and I don't want to make it so easy for AI. Right now, you can see I've got a lot of write lines, console write line calls in here.
Sure.
And these are going to make it very, very easy for AI to figure out what is going on. What I want to do instead is I want to obfuscate it first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double tap and I'm going to say, hey, I've got a bunch of strings in this method. I want to replace these strings with a call to an array that I want to declare and initialize. And I want that array to have a list of all of these strings that are currently, that were currently hard-coded inside of it. Let's see if it can figure out what I want.
So you're basically pulling them all out into kind of a resource object to sort of hide what they are.
Exactly. There we go. We pulled them all out, and let's see what we've got here. Now, notice what it did. It put comments in here for what the string used to be, at least inside of here, right? So you can see here messages of 0, reading data from the input file. Okay, great. And then messages of 5 right there. What is that? Error reading the input file. All right, it all looks pretty good. Let's do this. Can you remove all comments from this method? And now we'll take all those comments away. And there they are right there. We can show the diff there. You can see what's going on as it goes through. All right, hide that diff, close it down. Now that we've got this method much more obfuscated, let's do this. Hey, I've got a big method here. I want to break it into small ones.
I love the way that one of the things you're able to do here is you've got the ability to ask an entirely normal request, similar to how you might address a colleague, without necessarily needing to boil it down to the maximum you're willing to type.
Right. Okay, and there we go. We've got them broken down here into different pieces there. We can see all of those. If we want to bring up the diff here, you can see we've added a bunch of new methods, and that process data, here's what's happened to it. We've got a call to read data, and we've got a call to filter valid lines. And so you can see what it's done in terms of breaking all of that down right there. Yeah. Transform data, save data, all of those pieces that you can see there. So that's an example of one of the ways that you can use AI to modify or change your code. Let's go over into a WPF application, and let's bring up my main window here. My main window has nothing on it. I'm just going to double tap and say, hey, I want to build a calculator app with some buttons that I can enter numbers with, press operators. I want it to work. And I want to display where I can see what numbers I've entered and what the total is when I press equals.
Okay, that's a fairly complicated thing for any kind of computer to understand. But for any human, the sort of ethos of that behind it is kind of obvious. We know what we want, we know what we're asking for. Let's see what comes back here now.
All right, so here's what we've got. We can do a show diff if you want to see that. Let's see, what do we have? We've got some row definitions here, okay? And we have got some buttons. It looks like, though, it's pretty small. So it's not bad, but I want to create some styles for these. And I think I want to have styles for the buttons, the number buttons, and I want that to be different from the styles for the controls. I want to be able to independently tweak those. Hey, can we create a style for all the number buttons and create a separate style for all the operator buttons? And I wonder what it's going to do with the equals button, which is right there behind Rory's head right there. Because that's not an operator and it's not a number. I wonder what it will do. So here's what we've got. Let's take a look at the diff and you can see it there. It's given us a new style inside of there. So there's our style and it's given us a new Windows resources because one didn't exist already. And then I'm just going to hit F8 on this to go from these. And there you can see what it's done. On each one of these, it's given it a style reference. And let's close this down and just see, oh yeah, there you go. You can see operator button style is here. What did it do with the equals? Yep. Operator button style. Okay, great. So now we've got that operator button style. So now what we can do is we could say something like this. Hey, I want all my number button styles to have a height and width of 80 pixels and a font size of 24. And there it is. You can see what it's done right there. You can see it building right in there. Now, we haven't tested this out yet. Do we have an input thing? Is that what this is here? What is it? I am clicking. Oh, there it is. Text block right there. Is that it?
There we are.
Display.
Yep.
Let's look. We haven't checked on in the code behind. What's going on over in the code behind? So let's run it and see what happens. I'm seeing some underlines here. Looks like some nullable issues. Here it's up and running. 88. Okay, that's good. Times 2 equals 176. All right. So there's
pretty good.
There's our calculator. Now let's say we want to take our calculator and we want to have it start working with fractions. Well, I'm going to need a new class for that. I'm going to need a fractions class. So I'm going to come in here, double tap on the control key, and I'm going to say, hey, I want to create a new class called fraction with a numerator and a denominator. So I could make that a very complex or a very simple prompt, either way. Notice how fast this is, right, to bring this in here, right? So now I've got my fraction class with my numerator, my denominator, and that's not bad. I think what I want to do is I want to create a test case for this, though. Let's see if we can do that. Hey, can I get a test case for my fraction class? I said test case, but maybe it'll be helpful and give me a couple. Now notice it created a test folder and the fraction tests. Yep. So AI has that ability to kind of organize things if that makes sense. We have one test case here. We're setting the numerator to 3, or that's the expected. We create a new one. Oh, and we're just testing the expected against that. All right. So that's a way to do it. And do we have divide by 0? We don't have divide by 0 protection in here. So let's add that. Hey, can we add some protection against a 0 denominator? So I just asked the question like that, and it should figure out the right way to do it. And there it is. If denominator is 0, we're going to throw that argument exception. Okay, great. That's cool. But what would be really cool is if I could add up my fractions using the standard operators in the code, right? Like plus, minus. I want some operator overloads. So let's ask for those. Can I get some operator overloads? And there you go. So you can see we've got some operator overloads there. Next, let's create some test cases for these operator overloads. Let's create a new test class for that, put it in the tests folder. Let's call it fraction operator overload tests. And there you go. It's added the new file in there, and you can see test cases here. Let's run those tests. Running. Looks like we had a failed test in here. What do we have? 1/2 times 2/3. Is it equal to 1/3? No, it's not. It's equal to 2 over something. What's probably happening here that's leading to the failed test, in fact, probably doing some cross multiplication is what it's doing. Let's see if we can fix that by enforcing simplification right inside of here. So let's do that. Hey, I want to make sure that every new fraction that's created is in its simplest form. Okay, so I've got a method called simplify. Got a call to this GCD. What's simplify being called from? Right there, ensure the fractions in the simplest form. Okay, looks good so far, except for I don't know what this GCD is. Let's see if we can fix that. Can you rename this GCD method and its call to something that makes more sense? All right, greatest common divisor. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Let's go back to the test case now. And in fact, let's just run everything right up here. Run all the tests and see if we get everything passing. And it looks like we do. 5 pass, nothing failed. In each of these test cases inside this file, I'm creating fractions and I'm passing in numerators and denominators, and then I'm also checking to see if the end result after the operation is equal to an anticipated numerator and an anticipated denominator. What I want to do instead is I want to take all the numbers that are hard-coded into each one of these methods, and I want to pull them out and put them in a test case attribute, passing them as parameters to each of these test methods. And here are the changes. So far, these tests are a little bit hard to read, right? I have to know the order in what's happening. I have to know that this is 1/2, 1/2, and 3/2, 3/2, and 2/1. I'd like to do my test case like that. What I'd like to do is change all these test cases so they are essentially in this form, passing a single string, and then we break it down into individual parts. Let's see if we can ask AI to build and create that change for us. Okay, what I'd like to do next is let's create a whole new set of test methods inside this test case. But I want them to pass in a single string. And the string is going to be an equation in the form of, for example, 1/2 plus 3/2 is equal to 2. So it'll just use the plus sign and the equal sign inside of that equation. What I want to do is inside the test is I want to pass that string to a method that breaks it into 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. A fraction for the first number, an operator, which should be an enum value that tells me whether it's plus, minus, divide, or subtraction, another fraction, and then the equal sign. Oh, and I guess maybe one more. Well, not the equal sign, but what's on the right of the equal sign, which is another expected fraction. And let's see what we get from that. This is kind of pushing things to the limits. Let's see, what do we have here? We've got a parse equation. Well, I like it already, and it looks like it's bringing back a tuple. with the fraction, an operation, another fraction, and the fraction. So this is going to be that final expected result is going to be that last one right in there. Okay, I can work with tuples. That's not bad. Where are we calling this from? Here. Oh, look at this. So we've got 1/2 plus 3/2 is equal to 2. I love it. 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 Look at that. That is pretty impressive. Let's run all the tests and see what do we get. Is it going to work? Oh, it did not work. Let's see what's happening. Looks like the problem is in parse equation. So let's set a breakpoint in here and let's go debug it. I'm already concerned slightly about passing in this 2 right here. Let's see what we have. We've gone into parts here. We've got 1/2 plus 3/2 is equal to 2. Interesting to see the equal sign there because we're passing it in as a splitter. I'm surprised to see that in there. I did not know that that would be part of that in there. I would figure that since we're splitting on it, that one would be removed. But at any rate, we'll keep going. We'll step through fractional parts. So we take parts of 0, which is that fraction. Then we're doing the second one, which is parts of 2. So we've skipped over the operator. That looks good right there. Get those 2 parts in there. Expected parts, parts of 3. And this is, okay, this looks like this should not be 3, but should be 4. All right, so let's try that. And now that is giving me expected parts here, which has only 1 in it. Now this one I'm a little worried about. So right here, you can see this, we've got this kind of problem here. I think what I need to do is I want to extract this into its own method. Hey, I've got 3 constructors for a fraction inside of this parse equation method, and I'd like to extract each of these into a separate call that accepts just the array, just the result from the previous split call. So fraction 1 parts, fraction 2 parts, expected parts. Those would be the 3 parameters passed in. Inside that method, I want to see if that array has 1 entry or 2. If it has only 1 entry, I want to create a new fraction with the denominator being 1. Otherwise, I want to use both parts of that to create a new fraction. Now we've got a create fraction call. Looks like it's got the correct parameters inside there. And what's going on over here? Looks like it did exactly what I asked, right? There it is right there. Fraction parts coming in there. I love it. We might want to do an additional check to see if the length is 0, but it's not bad. So let's see now. We've been doing this while we are essentially stepping through the tests. So I'm going to just hit the hot reload there. Let's come back up here and make sure that we're executing all of those correctly. So now expected parts 2. So now what's the expected result? Oh, we don't know unless we go into it. It's numerator over denominator. Okay, so it's 2. So that looks good. However, what would be nice is during debugging, in fact, let's stop everything. And we won't find out the answer on this yet. Let's stop everything. Let's go back over to the fraction class. And can I get a debugger display attribute for this, please? And cool, now we've got that in there. So now let's resume our repeat last test run. That was a CodeRush voice command I used just to get back in there again. We've got our breakpoint. Let's see what happens. Okay, we know that's working now. Create fraction, expected result. There we go. And there's my operation. And looks like we're just declaring what it is. It's the add operation. And now we're going to return that. So perfect. That looks good. Let's get out of here. And now, depending on what the operation is, we do one of these 4 pieces. And then we check to see that it's equal. And it is. That's awesome. All right. So now let's go and we'll run all of the test cases one more time. Make sure everything is passing. And it looks like everything passed. I've got them right over here. So now my test cases have all passed. Thanks for watching, and thanks for choosing DevExpress.